So we're starting now.
We are.
Well,
hello, everybody at the What's on an Elephant and Castle Facebook page. I'm Nick from Rejuve. That is Melissa from Rejuve. And joining us is Louise Proddow, who is, how are you, Louise? I've known you for a long time through the business world, but recently just kind of a reconnection. We're really grateful that you can come here and talk to us about your journey, you know, in the working world as a woman, and then also with regards to what you do now with Tweak Marketing and Rejuvage. So thank you so much for joining us on this sunny-ish day.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's interesting that we've both had such textured journeys from the corporate world, and then realizing that it's more about how you feel on the inside than all that outside gratification. Yeah, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for everybody. Can you, for us to get here, but can you just in a couple of minutes just describe who you are and what you do and how you've got to where you are here today?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. So I'm 56 years old. I'm an empty nester. Both my daughters have left home, one's at university and the other one's off on her career. I started out as an ambitious young thing. I loved advertising when I was a kid. I used to draw my dad's logo when I was even a young teenager. And so I ended up being quite successful in marketing. I was VP of marketing at Nokia and other big tech corporates, and really enjoyed the buzz of creating global campaigns and being part of the dot-com boom. I didn't realize at the time, but I was a workaholic. I was addicted to work and learned some lessons through that. Then as I got older, I suppose I just was about to get up to 50, and I had an enlightenment moment where I realized I needed to change some things, that I wasn't as happy as I wanted to be. And so I started getting into holistic wellness and trained as a wellness coach and started Rejuvage because I felt that the midlife community was neglected, that everything in the media about health and well-being was for the young, and I felt that no one was talking to me. So I now parallel run a digital marketing agency and my wellness business, and try and combine the learnings of both to lead a happier, healthier life.
It's amazing. As you were talking, I was kind of remembering about we probably would have met just over 20 years ago. I think you were at Sun Microsystems, and I'd done a couple of corporate videos for you, but it was definitely a different time. You know, it was a time for me where I was a little bit lost with all of the kind of the bright lights and the glam and, you know, what was going on in the advertising world, but I was also working in broadcasting. And, you know, Louise, for me, it was a journey of like back then, and with all of the hustle and bustle, and what it was is that inside I felt like this fraud and that I didn't deserve anything that I had achieved. And it was a real journey for me to get to where I am right now. And it's kind of, and you know, how we can kind of really talk about today is this journey of these things that we think that we need on the exterior to make us feel good on the inside, and how we go through this journey to really discover that that isn't true. So I'm kind of interested to know, like, over the last 20 years, you know, what's been your feelings about, you know, these old ways of thinking that we had to succeed, you being a workaholic, to, you know, to getting to where you are now, where we were just talking about horses and donkeys and the love of spiritual connection with animals. It is quite a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a journey, and I sometimes don't think you're conscious you're on it. I was successful in my career, but I was never driven by money. I was driven by the endorphins of the success of, like, being part of a group and the satisfaction of creating something. And, you know, for me, it happened that I got promoted as I did more and more, but it became really hedonistic. You know, I can remember the days when we were working together and you would be down Soho, you would be going to nightclubs, you'd be working all day, then drinking champagne and really indulgent. And, you know, I can remember my kids, and they said when they were young, well, who's this? and that was me, that's mummy, because I was always sat there on my computer completely ignoring them. And I feel bad that was, but I wasn't even conscious that I was so consumed by work. I was just like, I loved the buzz of it, and I was just on this roll the whole time. And it's a drug, just like alcohol, just like exercise can be, you know. So I was on a journey, and it wasn't really that constructive, and I probably missed out on things.
It's kind of just like our relationship to anything, right? It doesn't matter what it is externally. It's our relationship to it that impacts us in certain ways that can be kind of helpful or maybe not so helpful. So, I don't know. I had a question and it just went away because I'm like, do I want to go down the route of like, what do you think that work kind of, would you call it a work ethic, or would you call it more of a distraction? Like, what was your motivation? You said it released the things, the endorphins, you were chasing this kind of high. What did it bring into your life? That like, was it empowerment? Was it being a woman in this field in this certain time? Like, what did it give you?
I think it gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of self-worth, because I became wrapped up with who I was, oh, Louise, she's running this big campaign, or I identified with that person that was delivering something, that was delivering an output. And I thought that was who I was. I lost myself in something that was tangible. And I think the lesson was that I didn't know how to slow down. I mean, society often pushes us, and there's a lot of pressure to always be busy and always achieve. And that learning to reflect, learning to breathe, meditate, sometimes to connect with your own vulnerabilities rather than trying to cover them up by being busy or appearing successful on the outside. I think that society doesn't teach us how to be vulnerable, how to really understand our own inner child. So that's, you know, I was covering up for that, and it made me destructive in certain ways, because I was a good mother. I put my children first, but I was transactional in relationships. So I couldn't juggle everything. I was good at working, I was good at being a mother, but I didn't have anything left to have a long-term relationship. So yeah.
It's interesting. It's like the pressure put on what mothering has to look like. And if you're a woman in a certain role, then you can be one of it or none of it. And like the kind of just pressure and stigma around being a woman, a working woman, and being a mother, and all this kind of like shoulding that happens from the world. Like, well, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, you should be that, you shouldn't be that. And then also what you were speaking to before of like, even the kind of the ask of us to say, you know what, I actually don't know, and this might be okay, and like that I don't know right now, but I'm trying to figure out. So that vulnerability piece that's so often seen as a weakness is actually such a strength to say, like, you have all the answers. It's like, I don't, because this is new for all of us, right? So that like that struggle between needing to know and everyone thinking they know better than you as a mother, as a woman, as a professional, and all the things that come with it, huh?
Yeah, I think you've touched on like something really interesting, that there's a lot of social pressure to fit into a stereotype as a woman, and to be a certain type of mother. And even being a successful woman who's bringing her children up on her own and has short-term relationships is frowned on. I can remember people calling, oh, she's a man-eater, you know, watch out for her, she's going to walk all over you. I've always had a kind spirit, and I've never used people, but because I was self-sufficient, because I could bring up my children on my own, because I didn't need a man for the classic reasons you might want a man, then I did get a lot of people thinking you're like a bit eccentric, or you're hard, and so that is difficult when you know inside that's not who you are.
Or you can or you're commitment phobic, or there must be something wrong with you, or you don't know how to fully, like, all these, everyone tries to put everyone else into a box so we can understand them better. It's like, maybe it's none of our business. I mean, Nick and I were just talking the other day of, like, if you're a strong, independent woman and you choose to be in relationship, then what kind of partners are you inviting in? And so oftentimes people don't know what to do with a person who kind of has their stuff together, has their life sorted, and is consciously choosing who to invite into their life, which is so counter to all the messaging we get, right, about dating and sex and love, which is like, very fairy tale and Disney. But it's like, what does conscious dating, conscious relationship look like? Where it's like, you're just entering my life with choice. And so we can partner and share, not because my half needs another half, but it's more my wholeness is agreeing to your wholeness, and let's venture together, right? But who grows up? I did not grow up at all with that version.
Yeah, that is, and people find that threatening, because you're not codependent and needy, so that the person knows that you could walk away because you're whole in yourself, and rather than there being something physical that's tying you together, and that can turn some relationships toxic, because people feel they have to find a way of controlling you, and they might do it in ways that you're not conscious they're doing for a while. So yeah, I have discovered that.
Yeah.
I want to kind of take a step back because no, I could let you guys go, because I love both what you just said about, like, becoming the whole, and being able to be a whole that meets another whole, rather than this kind of Jerry Maguire, you complete me BS. But I want to kind of go back to where you were brought up, because you're from up north, and maybe your journey down here. Let's go even further back. Like the need to kind of maybe impress, and then the pressures that are put upon you to succeed. How far back in your life do you remember anything like that, and where you grew up?
Yeah, so I'm from Lancashire, and I was brought up in Leyland, which is an industrial town. It's Leyland paints and buses, and when I was a kid, they were all, the town was full of factory workers in their blue overalls, and it was very down to earth. And my dad started off as a bricklayer, and he was like literally, building houses. And my mum was a secretary, and gradually they were that very Protestant work ethic. It was like we everyone in the family really worked hard, and my dad really did work hard, and then he became a successful builder, and my mum became a teacher and then head of an IT department, which was like quite innovative for a woman to be doing IT lecturing when 20-30 years ago. So I can remember them always working hard, and it was like that, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So it was kind of instilled in me very young that you were responsible for your own destiny, but it was linked to work. It was quite a grounded northern values. So so that was the beginning. And then my dad was an alcoholic, unfortunately. Back in those days, I don't think people understand addictions as much. And now, looking at it from an adult's point of view, my dad had become successful, but he hadn't been well educated. He'd left school really young, so he felt alienated when he was mixing in new circles. And I think he turned to drink. It makes me sad, but he turned to drink, I think, to compensate for not feeling part of this new circle he was in. And he died of cirrhosis of the liver in the end in his 40s. He had all the trappings of a typical alcoholic, womanizing, binge drinking. So I saw the raw realities of life thrown at me when I was young, and then everything went tits up. Like he died, there was no money. I went off to university. In those days you got grants. I was self-sufficient. I just had to work. You know, I had 2 jobs to get me through university, and it was just like a survival instinct. It was like, my family's broken up, I'm here on my own, I'm going to have to make this work. So I just started working hard to look after myself. Yeah, so it wasn't probably a classic upbringing, and I've got a lovely family and I'm really close to them, and I just wish that back then, probably 30, 40 years ago, people had understood addiction like they do now. But what my father taught me was, you can only deal with your demons just if you understand them yourself, if you accept them. And he only accepted that he was an alcoholic too late. So that shaped me, and if I'm honest, I probably still have to deal with that, and that's probably one of the reasons I'm so much of a feminist and look after myself, because it's rooted in some history. So I think that we all have to start understanding how our history has affected us and which bits of it we try and change.
Yeah, it's
I didn't expect to be sharing that. It's made me feel quite emotional.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. It's interesting. Can you hear me okay? Somehow they're doing construction right now. Okay. It's interesting, this idea of demons and shadows that come in our life, and we're kind of like, when you're a kid and you're watching this, like you said, the raw reality, which I think is like captures it a lot. I don't know if it's intuitive, but it's a survival mechanism, I think, to like run away from it and see it as see it as the thing that's causing the pain. And part of my own practice in healing has been like, I've said this before in so many chats, but like turning to the demon and like offering it the thing we never got offered ourselves, which was maybe love or kindness. So we're offering this demon this opportunity to sit, to have a cup of tea with, to chat about, and then what happens. But I think we don't, when we're kids and when we're learning, we just do what we survive, and then it comes to a certain point where that survival technique no longer serves us in the same way. So it's actually causing us more harm. I don't mean to make this like a session or a therapy session. It's always the interesting thing is like the things of your childhood, and the same for mine, got me to the point where I got these skills and these personality traits. And for my own journey, I'm like, well, maybe it's not my personality trait. Maybe it's my trauma response that I've taken in as a characteristic. Like that just shattered my whole world. So I'm still processing all that. But on top of that is like, we have to learn our new ways of being for the things that saved us, no longer saving us in the same way. And that's a lot of unleashing and unfolding and newness and scary too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned it sounds obvious, but that you can control your mind, that your mind is a muscle, and that I think positive thinking can sometimes be taken too far. Like, when people are, I'm going to have positive affirmations that there's going to be a car on my drive and things like that. But I do believe that you can stop your monkey brain taking you continually down the same road. And like, I agree with you. It's like listening to that inner voice and some of those demon messages, listening to them and then saying, right, I've listened to you, but then saying, right, but this is the perspective, and today, and I can get through this, and I'm going to do these positive steps. So I now try and manage my mind more rather than going in a really anxious cycle. And I found that with lockdown is that I've been surprised by how much that could trigger anxiety, just because you're in a more confined environment and you have more time with your own head. So learning to deal with that, I think has been a big thing. And I still believe nature is the best therapy. I know tree hugging sounds like a bit hippie-ish, but to me, being outside with the trees, and no, not just doing 15 minutes, but walking till you're tired and really taking it all in can change your mindset so much.
I'm having deja vu because I just had a workshop earlier this morning. Sorry, Nick. And I said the exact same thing. I'm like, they're like, what resources? I'm like, go outside. Like, you don't have to go read a book or download any new podcast. Just go outside and touch a tree. And especially now with the weather, take your shoes off, take your socks off, and walk on the earth. And not to sound so hippie too, but like Mother Earth will give you what you need, man. She will give you what you need.
Yeah.
It's like we have the greatest teacher right here. That's
But it doesn't happen immediately. I think walking and being with nature, you have to get it into a habit, and it might take you a month, but if you keep going out for those walks and you have a regular pattern, that gradually you will find that you are looking forward to it, and you know that it's going to make you feel better. So I agree with you, but you've got to bear with it, and it's an accumulative thing.
Absolutely.
You were both talking about some amazing tools and strategies to be able to deal with certain stresses in our lives. But as you were talking, Louise, first of all, thank you for sharing about your dad. Like, I know we've talked about it before, because my dad, he died an alcoholic too, and I think about how he was from Doncaster in South Yorkshire, the son of a coal miner, a rugby player, school teacher, and I think about both of them never having the capacity, because of the environments that they were brought up in, which is never being able to recognize that they needed help, or never even having the tools to ask for help. And I think it's through people like you sharing your story, and through people like me sharing my story, where people can go, oh, do you know what, that happened to my dad too, or even my mother. And because of these kind of traits of masculinity and these imbalances in masculine behaviors that don't give us the ability to actually ask for help. And I'm just wondering if you've ever been in a point in your life where you wanted to kind of say, help me, to somebody, but because of the kind of pressures that you were under as a woman trying to succeed, or succeeding in that world, where it's something that we've grown into as we've aged, the ability to ask for help. But also for me, it was because I was dying. How can we kind of encourage people who have been brought up in these kind of imbalanced masculine environments to actually recognize, help me, or that they've got a problem, ask for help, and then do the things that you guys are talking about, which is going for walks in nature and maybe seeking therapy or therapeutic advice from somebody? Does that make sense? Is that a question?
That's a really interesting question, because often you need a trigger and to hit quite a low point to get you to accept that you need help, or that to go out and get it. And I think that a couple of things. One is, find a community like you've got here, or like even on Instagram, I found a lot of midlife women that I can relate to. Or Facebook, you find a community where you can listen to people that have the same things as you, even if at the beginning you're just listening to their stories, and whether it's about being in an abusive relationship or alcohol, or you're struggling with the menopause or something, there are groups. So I really would encourage people to look for communities that they can be involved in. I know a lot of people often say talk to your friends. That does help, but for me, that often is too close, and I think I find someone one step to remove that can be a little bit more independent, and you don't feel like you're overexposing yourself. And then I think self-care is a really important thing. That I'm a big believer that our bodies are made up of trillions of cells. So how we look after our cells and the toxins in our bodies. So how you think, what you eat, what you drink, and how you exercise, if you start taking little steps to look after yourself physically a bit better, it's going to help you mentally to start getting the strength to make those steps to join a community or get a therapist. So I would encourage people to, you know, self-help can be quite basic, but you know, it's about eating the right, you know, not keep eating sugar or coffee, or just little steps in the right direction.
Second one today.
Yeah. A couple of points you said are really important to highlight. It's the little steps in the right direction. It doesn't have to be, especially when it comes to self-care, right? I think there's this messaging sometimes that it has to be a like capital S self-care, where it can be like drinking a cup of water every hour, you know, keeping your body hydrated. It's not like putting rose petals in your bathtub. It's like really drink a glass of water. It can start there. And then also the idea around consistency, right? So it's like a marathon game now. This isn't a sprint. This life thing is not a sprint. So doing 1 minute of the same thing every day is a lot, can go a long way, rather than doing the big thing every day and putting this pressure on yourself. Like we don't need that. Just like if you say yes to yourself for 1 minute a day, what does that look like? Or what does that allow in, right? Like I say that a lot, but that's really the game changer. It doesn't have to be
if you start doing it for 30 plus days, it becomes a habit.
Exactly.
And it's also accepting that we're human. You might have good intentions, and then some days you might feel like you don't want, you know, I love exercising, but yesterday I was really tired. I just thought I'm not exercising, and I feel better today because I just let myself recharge. So I think it's having positive habits, but actually not getting obsessed with them, and sometimes saying, oh, like I've broken it, but it doesn't matter.
Being flexible within the structure, right? Like the fluidity within the container is what it's all about. I had a question, Nick, do you mind? Because I know I've been taking over, but
no, you go ahead. No,
because you mentioned something before, when like you didn't realize the lockdown was going to bring like this kind of presence of anxiety, and like what that, and then the way you talked about it, and what we just talked about now is like the little things we can do, and like having that flexibility. What keeps coming to my mind is this idea of choice, right? And the power, and also fear that can happen when we realize we have the ability to choose every day and to choose ourselves every day. So I'm going to have like a twofold question, and I didn't give it any thought, so bear with me. Okay, first is a story. One, I realized for me, a lot of my anxiety, and this might get a little political, but leave it or take it, doesn't matter. Part of my anxiety around COVID and now traveling, opening, and all this stuff is that, or in the past, like I feel like I have no agency. My agency is not being respected. My choice is being very limited in what I can do and honor my own body. My sovereignty just doesn't count in these systems. And that's creating this sense of like, I'm not, even the thing I can control, which is like my body and myself, is not being honored. And that's terrifying for me. And the second piece is like this thing about choosing yourself. To my question is, how do we choose ourselves, or this is my question. What have you had to unlearn, maybe, so that you can be in the position where you're at, where you created this company, where you're providing wellness for women in their 50s, middle age, and the new learning you're kind of providing for people? What did you have to unlearn to get here? I know none of that. There was no thread in what just rambled out, but I guess it's around choice and unlearning, as you wish.
So what choices have I learned to make to get me to where I am now? One thing that we haven't touched on that I think is important, and you're probably too young you are too young to have gone through this, but that some things you feel are medical, that as a woman, and I know that affects men as well, your hormones are just always fluctuating. And I think sometimes we can be hard on ourselves and feel that all our anxiety or what we're feeling is our fault, when really it's to do with physical things, like when you get into in your perimenopause or the menopause, your estrogen levels go down. Women have testosterone and that goes down, so your energy can go. So one thing I've learned is there can be some really like tough things happening to your hormones that really affect you. And I can remember when I was back in corporate land, that was in my 40s, and I had to leave meetings because I was having hot sweats. I was like really like just soaking, or waking up in the night having to change the sheets because I'm just stringing wet. And so taking time to have blood tests, really pushing the NHS to give you the right medical treatment that you need. And, you know, like not just, a lot of women will go with hormone problems and they'll get put on antidepressants and it's not solving it. And you might have had health issues that means you can't go on HRT. So you might need to do some natural things. So I've learned that your body can throw some curveballs at you from the hormones point of view. So really get that dealt with, because if you're trying to sort out how you feel mentally and you've got a physical thing that's affecting your anxiety and everything, you're on a losing battle. And I think the taboo of hormones for men as well as women, you know, there's a lot of men. On my Instagram, I talk a lot about women's issues, and I get men messaging me saying, I wish men would talk about, you know, issues they're having with their testosterone or their issues sexually or mentally, and you can get medication to help that. So I've learned about getting support medically, and that you have to keep on that journey, taking supplements and things, and that I just believe that feeling the best you can takes quite a lot of effort. I don't, you know, I don't want to break the self-help storybook that we sometimes see on social media, but you know, I don't really like drinking a lot of water, like a glass every hour, or you know, I find being healthy in every dimension of my life, you have to make a bit of an effort. It's not always easy, but like I know that if I do it, and I do it physically with what I eat, what I drink, the sort of people that I mix with, like I think we can accept people in our lives sometimes that aren't actually right to be in our lives. And sometimes it's all right to say, I've evolved and I need a new group of friends, or I want to spend my time with different people. When I grew up, I can remember, maybe it's a northern thing, but people used to come around your house and just come in, like the doors were open, and you always were with the same sort of people. And I was brought up to feel like you had the same people with you all the time. But I've kind of learned as I evolve, the people I want to mix with and do things with has changed as well. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it's so important. I mean, it's important. It says a lot. Nick, I don't know if you have a question. I could keep talking.
Well, I want to go more into Rejuvage because, you know, Louise, tomorrow I turn 50, and you know, I'm being celebrated by my friends about the way I look on the outside. You know, you don't look it, and this and this and this. And I want to talk about the kind of cultural disnorms, about the pressures that are put on you know, the image of how women should look and how men should look, and how, why is it that there's this thing about women who reach certain ages are no longer considered Instagrammable. You know, beauty seems to be this thing that changes on all these levels, and it's so much different in this patriarchy that we live in. With regards to Rejuvage, I know it's something that I see your posts, I see what you do, and I applaud it, because we're all in these bodies and they're all doing the same thing, which is getting older. But how can you see, you know, as everyone is growing older, you know, like we are, the life expectancy is living longer, how can like we break down these old ideas around age barriers, about you have to have done something by a certain age, you have to look a certain way? when really I mean, to us, it shouldn't matter. But how can people, you know, someone of your background, someone of your, you know, with regards to marketing and what you do, but how can we start changing the language with regards to, again, the aging processes and how beauty is perceived?
I think that we have to each start doing it for ourselves, in terms of not letting the media hold you back, like not becoming the stereotype. If you search for, you know, over 50s on iStock or whatever, they're all like grey people that you would like, really old looking, like the old classic Saga ads. And to me, we have to push against brands by being true to ourselves, like wearing what you want and doing what you want, and realizing, I think to be happy over 50, or I think this applies at any age really, but there's a myth that people should start thinking about retiring when you get to your 50s and 60s. I know my mother retired in her mid 50s. But I think having a purpose, and whether that purpose is not giving in to what aging can do to you. So the media can put pressure on you, and you can start just accepting wearing like baggy clothes and putting on weight. But it's like I said, if you make a bit of an effort and understand the aging process, that you know, as you get older, you do lose muscle, you get muscle wastage, and learning that you should do strength training, and if you want to go to the gym and you want to lift those weights, even though that bit of the gym is full of 20-year-old men, you do it because that's good for you and you're really pushing the boundaries. So I think have the confidence and small steps. I follow a woman in Australia, she's won a muscle building competition in her late 70s, and she's so proud of it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's difficult to get the brands to change as an individual, but if collectively we're all showing that, and you know, going to the gym or wearing different types of clothes, and not filling those stereotypes, I think that the commercial side will catch up with us. Yeah,
it's interesting because it almost feels like what's needed is, well, I think like everything with change is like grassroots kind of level of like acceptance, like, hey man, our bodies get older. And I loved what you said about the hormones, and also like paying attention to the physical like effects of the physiological things happening, because sometimes we make it around like our mental health when it's actually our body. I mean, last week I was at a meeting and we had this check-in, and somebody's like, okay, Mel, how are you doing? I was like, my hormones are trying to murder me today. I don't know why I have to be here. Like, and it was so honest, because like, also like for us to have to try to keep showing up when our body, for me, it feels like my body tries to murder me sometimes. Yeah. But it's even like this acceptance of like, this is what happens. We age, we get older, and we can almost own it without feeling shame around it, or thinking like, Nick, to your question, like we have to almost keep up with the 20-year-olds when we're not 20. Like,
no, we don't have to keep up with the 20-year-olds, but we don't have to just accept aging in the way that the media stereotypes it, that it means that you're going to be, you know, like lazy, or you're going to put on middle-age spread, or you don't really care about what you look like. You know, on my Instagram, I was doing a talk on sex last week, and I posted something of me in my underwear, and you know, I get comments from people saying, oh, you know, like, you're in your 50s and you're in your underwear. It's like, well, stop following me. You know, I'm not making you look at my Instagram. If you think it's unattractive, I don't mind it. I'm doing it because I'm body positive. I don't. So I think you shouldn't let the media decide what you do, but don't give in to the aging process at a physiological level or a mental level. I think this idea of retiring and giving up and just sitting on the sofa and having nothing to do apart from look after your grandchildren, I just couldn't think of anything worse. I want to have a purpose. I want to, it doesn't have to be a commercial purpose, but learning something or doing something or helping others. Or, you know, I went trekking in Nepal a couple of years ago with my younger daughter and with a backpack. I've never been backpacking in my life, but I did it in my 50s. And it's like, yeah, why don't you, you know, I see other people doing like this wild swimming now. And like, I just think when you're older, you don't have as many people dependent on you, young children. You might have parents dependent on you. You hopefully have a bit more time. This is a time to be brave. Like we have all this experience and wisdom when you're older. And, you know, in a lot of societies, they treasure older people and you would go to them for advice. And I think we should look at ourselves and think all that experience. And, you know, it's like you, Nick, you've learned so much and you're sharing it in both of you on Retribe. That is such a joy that we're here and we've learned so much and we've been through so much and we want to share it. And that is a wonderful thing about getting older. Yeah.
It is. And I'm not going to tell Melissa about the secret thing you get when you turn 50. It's the 50 club. So
That's curious.
yeah, it's like a Mason's handshake. No, you don't know about it until you turn 50. You know, like I think that's the thing. And we were talking a few weeks ago about you know, the generational barriers that are put up. You know, we had a lady on who was doing Ironman triathlons at 77 years old.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just a thing that we are now, where, like you said, experience, you know, you cannot buy it. It's just given to you. You cannot, you know, and I don't demean the experiences I had when I was 24 and 25. They were just as real to me then. You know, but I know that now after 25 years, they meant a lot different things to me. And I think that by us being able to share to younger generations how we felt when we were at those ages, and then they can relate to it. And then we can say, well, you know, I felt like this, I went through this, it didn't end up turning out very well for me. So why don't we try to work on things together today? So I think it's just it's something that we need to work on, and I'm really blessed that that you could come on here and talk to us about it. We now have like this kind of blueprint to getting out of COVID. You know, a one-way track, as Johnson has called it. What does the next few weeks and months entail for you, and what you guys are doing?
Well, from a business point of view, it's quite tough. So I just like heads down and keeping my costs down, running my agency and working hard and looking after my staff. So some of them have been part furloughed, maybe just one day a week. But so, you know, I think a lot of us have found it tough from a business point of view. So it's just kind of, I re-changed my expectations from a business point of view. It's like I've gone down revenue-wise 25% this year, and so it's like not being hard on myself about business. It's like, as long as we're ticking over, so I'll just continue in that mindset work-wise. I'm not putting me or my team under too much pressure. And then I'm just looking forward to seeing my family and you know, my daughters, and my younger daughter's in Edinburgh at university. I'll go up and stay with her. Just simple things like that. You know, I don't have massive big ambitions to go traveling abroad. I think I'll still be a little bit cautious for a while with all this COVID stuff going on. But you know, I just hope that we come out of it and we haven't got another lockdown. Yeah.
Amazing. Melissa, do you have any kind of final questions or question?
No, I think it's been great and informative, and yeah, lovely.
It's been a mix. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I love what you're doing. Nice to just talk so openly. I'm surprised about where we ended up, but
usually works that way.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, and then you know, all of a sudden you look at it and it's like 45 minutes has gone by. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, oh,
no,
was
I
that
know.
45 minutes?
Yeah,
I thought that was a lot.
I will say, as the young one here, it is, and in my own healing, like it came, like my first teacher, my first person who changed my life was an 80-year-old man. Like, and he just sat there, and for the first 3 months of me meeting him, I just cried for 3 months. I didn't say a word, but his presence of something was the comfort that I never could hold on to in my younger years. And like, I learned everything I learned now through this man. And also I'm realizing it's just the lineage I'm carrying on, right? So like, what happens if we the kind of stigma or bars or blocks that put up between like the generations were kind of like blurred a bit, where we can have conversations.
I really believe in that intergenerational communication. I have friends of all ages.
Yeah, it's just, it feels like so powerful and so simple, yet there's like all this stuff keeping us afraid maybe of talking, or I don't know what. I mean, that's a whole other conversation of what factors are into play, why we're afraid to talk and to engage with people who have just been along around, whether we agree with their philosophy or not. They've just been around longer, and the perspectives are so important to really engage, right? We all have so many different perspectives of this world. That's my not question, but thank you. Thank you for talking.
Louise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
How can people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with Rejuvage or follow you on Instagram?
Just contact me on Instagram. So that's where I go the most. So yeah, on Instagram, Rejuve.
If you ping me, I'll put the links in the Facebook
it's
group
just at
and
Rejuve.
page. So.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. And thanks everybody at the What's on an Elephant Castle Facebook page. We'll see you on Thursday at 11 a.m. for our Widening the Circle. It's the end of the month gathering. So we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.